With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This is Smashy Business Show. I am Ward Ahmed, and today I have Majid with me, and it's the 5th of March. It's a Wednesday. You know, we're midweek. The week is almost done. How are you doing, Majid?
It's good. It's going good. Thankfully, the week is ending.
I love how you have the same comment every single day.
Yeah.
It's good. Is it excellent?
Every day is just a day that we have to go through. We have to go through it. But yeah, business world-wise, news-wise, everything-wise, it's very interesting. Times are very interesting. A lot of things are happening. I thought Ramadan will be slow, but it's actually faster than normal.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of things are happening. Everything is happening at the same time.
Oh my God,
So, yeah.
You know, Majid, I just remembered something. So basically, before last night, I went to Global Village, and you know, every single place that I go to, I always have to get a matcha. And I went to this place, it's called Cha Cha Club. They're also open in levels. But beside the point, they basically had these like camel graphics in their store. And I was like, wait, is this camel milk? And then I was watching them, I'm like, what milk are they going to use? By the way, milk determines the kind of matcha that you're going to get. And then I noticed that they were using al-marai. And, you know, for the longest time ever, I've known that al-marai is from Saudi Arabia. I've known it, but I didn't actually know who founded it. And, you know, if you guys don't know this, if this is new information for you, the person who actually founded it was a Saudi prince. And his name is Sultan bin Muhammad al-Kabir. And in fact, he's actually the grandson of King Abdul Aziz, who founded Saudi Arabia. And it was so interesting for me because of the fact that basically, he founded Al-Mara'i in 1977, and he actually collaborated with these Irish brothers. And it's just the entire story and how, like, you know, in 1970, basically, oil prices were going up. And so he had this fear of, you know, what if America and the UK, they stop exporting stuff to us?
Yeah.
So he was like, you know, I have to do something for the Saudi market. And I find the story in itself so inspiring because I've always said this to you before, like, if I have one belief in every single economy, you should have your own free market.
Yeah.
You should have your own products. You shouldn't always rely on exports from other countries. And so this is like such a great example of success.
You're saying this when you're sitting in UAE where we import 90% of the stuff, even food, edibles.
Yeah. Al-Marai is so good. I mean, they have these like protein shakes.
Yeah, Al-Marai is great.
Yeah,
It's
they have like the chocolate, strawberry. They just have such a large variation. And today, by the way, they are valued at $15 billion.
Yeah.
$15 billion, Majid. I always feel like F&B is so underestimated, and then you look at that number and you think to yourself, and you're like, wow.
I think Jeff Bezos, once one of the clips I saw of him talking about why Amazon will never fail and why Amazon will always work. The theory that he gave fits here. He's like, always go into a business which is always needed. He's like, the customers will always need something delivered. The customers will always need something delivered fast. The customers will always need something delivered at their doorstep with the most convenience. So he's like, that's Amazon's business. We don't sell stuff. We sell convenience. Likewise, Al-Marai and the whole idea that food and beverage, people will always eat. It's never going to happen in the history of the world that people stop eating, right? So food products are always great. It's just you have to crack the market. You have to understand, like Al-Marai came at a good time. At that time, there was no competition. So they had this first mover advantage. They built an industry around it. Now we have so many different brands. I remember there's another one from Saudi. My wife has Saudi roots. She's lived there. So she told me another brand that this is the cheaper version of Al-Marai, and like low-income households.
What is it?
And it starts with N, Nova or something, but it's also a Saudi brand. So Al-Marai is like a middle income and a higher income brand, and it's like the premium condensed milk brand. And then they, obviously you told they went into everything, labans and everything, shakes and flavored everything. But they started with milk, right? And that brand is only still in the milk category, but it's a cheaper option. So interesting stories that a lot of people don't know. This Prince
But not
story,
just that,
I didn't know, to be honest.
I found it so interesting
Yeah.
because of the fact that I love how in Saudi Arabia, the royal family, they contribute so much to the economy. And I feel like another prime example of this is Prince Al-Walid bin Talal.
Yeah.
Basically, he owns a Kingdom Holding Company, which also owns a major stake in the NBC. They have a lot of companies there. So it's very interesting to see, especially because a report just came out by the UN, by the way, about Arabic economies. And Egypt and Saudi Arabia were both among the 20 economies that contribute the most to the world. Imagine that. So that was really interesting to see. But you know what's another interesting story, Majid? You were speaking about first move.
First mover
what's it called?
advantage, yeah.
Yes, first mover advantage. Another story that's really interesting to me is Uber. So I believe the guy who founded Uber, his name is Travis Kalanick. I believe that's the name.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But basically, he founded Uber at a time where he used to work at McKinsey, and it's a consulting company, and he just basically couldn't get to work easily in the way that he wanted to. And now, obviously, there are a lot of companies that are providing the same services that Uber is providing, but that name there. That first move that he made, it's always going to be historical.
Uber it.
And people.
Maybe you're calling Kareem, but you'll call it Uber it.
I use Kareem.
Like Google
I use
it.
Kareem. I love Kareem.
For example, one of the examples is surf.
Yeah.
It's actually called detergent, right? But everyone in at least my region, I don't know here, but everyone in my region calls it surf.
Yeah.
Because Surf Excel came as a brand for detergents. It's the oldest brand in the Asian region, even in India. A lot of people, they call it Surf. They don't call it a detergent. So that's the power of having a first move in any industry. The name that you give your brand eventually becomes like synonymous to the product. So that's this soap operas. I remember when I was reading about branding and marketing very long time ago in university. The very first example my teacher gave me was, why are they called soap operas? The dramas, that longer dramas.
I actually don't know.
Yeah,
Why
because
are they?
soap was one of the biggest brands that was advertised during those dramas.
Oh,
so they were called
really?
soap operas because a lot of, according to their research, a lot of women watched those
interesting.
dramas. And soap is one thing that women use for washing, detergent, and dishes and everything. So they were like, let's market soap in that.
Let's just
so that's
coin
one
it
of,
as that. That's so interesting.
So a lot of brands have this thing there. They have origin story, and also they were the first movers. So eventually, the product is now synonymous to their name, not the actual category.
And Majid, I feel like often names are so underestimated. I feel like the name that anything in life is given, whether it's a human being, a corporation, whether it's a plan, it's something important.
Yeah.
And when I say this, I'm specifically referring to what happened yesterday. So basically, Arab leaders have come together in Egypt, in Cairo, and they have approved a $53 billion reconstruction plan for Gaza, which they are calling the Arab Plan. That's what they're coining it as. And what it's doing is that it's completely rejecting Trump's U.S. takeover of Gaza.
Yeah.
And
He wanted to build a Riviera there. Weird person doing weird stuff.
Calling it
Because of
Trump
him, the
Gaza.
markets are down. We can go on and on about Trump in the last 2 or 3 days, whatever he's done, Bitcoin is down, markets are down, all the global markets are in red. Some of Arab markets like
Imagine,
Dubai,
I
etc.
remember you told me that Bitcoin would go up because of him.
Yeah, everyone thought of it.
Imagine if I had believed
Bitcoin-
you and I did invest.
No, it will go up. See, Bitcoin will never be zero. That's not the point. The point is, everyone was thinking that it had touched the 100K mark, and because of Trump, it will reach to 200, 300,000, maybe 1 million at some point as well. That's not happening recently. He's put tariffs. The tariffs on Canada come into effect today. So a lot of things that everyone thought he will do have backfired on the economy. The Wall Street Journal called him dumb.
But beside the point on Trump,
Yeah.
let's
just
not mention him for.
No, I'm
for
just
like a
linking
second.
him that whatever he's doing right now, whatever plans he's putting forward, whatever tariffs, whatever Riviera plans he's putting forward, according to Wall Street Journal, they're dumb.
But
That's
you
the
don't know.
exact
You
word
know
they
what?
used
Maybe,
for
honestly,
him.
maybe this is what Trump wanted.
Yeah.
This is what some people are arguing,
yeah.
by the way, that this plan, this $53 billion reconstruction
Yeah.
plan that, Egypt has come up with, it's what he wanted. It's what he wanted to trigger. And honestly, that could be a real conclusion,
Yeah.
knowing the kind of character that Trump is. But, beside the point, getting back to the topic, I think what's really important and something that we should all know is that, the 2023 to 2025 Israeli genocide has left, according to the UN, 90% of homes damaged or destroyed. And according to Reuters, over 45,000 people have been killed.
More than that,
And
most
probably
probably.
more than
Officially,
that.
yes, but more than
And
that, obviously.
what makes this $53 billion reconstruction plan so special is the fact that they have very specific things in place for it, actually.
Yeah.
And it's actually divided into 3 phases, and they are trying to enforce it by 2030. So phase number 1 is going to have $3 billion invested for rubble clearing and temporary housing for Palestinians. Phase 2 is going to be $20 billion for infrastructure, development and housing. And phase 3, which is basically the final phase, is going to be $30 billion, which is going to be invested for complete housing, industrial zones, ports, and an airport. Now, this plan, in theory, it sounds quite great, but in practice, I have a very mixed opinion on it. And, it's because of the fact that this funding, according to Al Jazeera, will come from a mix of international sources, including the UN, global financial institutions, foreign governments, and private sector investments. However, the BBC did note that right now, while wealthy Gulf states have shown an interest in investing, they have not done that yet, because nobody actually has assurance that these efforts are not going to be affected by another future conflict.
Yeah.
So, this is, I
This
would
is
say,
complicated. This is a valid point by BBC that the problems are still there. And the biggest problem, the main problem actually, the primary problem, the
Is
only
Israel.
problem, Israel is still there. It's a very valid concern that if we rebuild everything and they come back and bomb everything again because they're getting so much, we talked about the military aid that they're just receiving, a $3 billion military aid, tanks, Caterpillar, the bulldozers and everything. So very valid concern, to be honest. But again, the good things, there's 2 good things that I saw from this news. The Arab nations coming together for an emergency meeting. It was called the Extraordinary Arab Summit because these are extraordinary circumstances where they've come together, sat down together, listened to Egypt's plan, which was presented by Egypt, LCC, the head of state. They listened to it, they understood it, and they have at least gotten a consensus on it. So Arab countries, the richest ones, everyone was there. Qatar's Emir was there, Kuwait's Emir was there, UAE, Saudi, every Arab country was represented there. They actually came together in extraordinary circumstances
I think it's interesting that you
and
said
talked
that
about
the
it.
Emir of Qatar was there. They did not just send any ambassador.
Yeah,
That's
they
the
came
prince
themselves. And the funny thing, an interesting thing, and very I would say it's a very bold move. Kuwait's Emir said a very interesting thing that Israel should pay for it because they bombed everything. So yeah, people, the emirs who are and leaders of the Arab world, they're very courageous and brave to an extent. They would say what the truth is, and he said that
They also have the
should
power
build
to
it.
do so. They have the power.
They have the power
and they
and-
have the resources.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I found something really interesting, Majid. They have like I said,
Yeah.
these Gulf leaders, they have the power and they have the resources. These are resources. This oil, this natural gas. These are actually resources that Palestine too has.
Yeah.
So basically, I found this study in 2019 and done by the United Nations, and it's called "The Economic Cost of Occupation for the Palestinian People: The Unrealized Oil and Natural Gas Potential." And the findings in this report, Majid, let me just read this to you guys. So basically, it found that, located off the Palestinian coast, there's basically 122 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. And that, the recoverable oil reserves are estimated to be around 1.7 billion barrels. And that if these resources were actually exploited and Palestinians were actually given the right to exercise control over their land, it could actually potentially generate up to $524 billion. And I remember yesterday I asked you this question of, what does Trump have here? Remember that
a lot of
question?
things, yeah.
And it's those natural resources that Palestinian people, unfortunately, have never been able to, to exercise control over
Because
ever since.
decades over decades over decades over decades, not October 7, decades over decades, they've been, their right of self-determination, their right to live in their land has been taken away by Israel. I personally think at least them coming together, talking about it, having a plan. See, that's the first phase, right? Planning. And soon
Yeah, I
enough we'll
remember you
see
were
that
saying that before.
it's always planning after any clash or any war or anything that happens, and this is a genocide that is literally being carried out in front of the whole world. So the first part is planning. The plan is done. We see it's a very detailed three-phase plan, $53 billion going into it. The next step is implementation, and that is going to be the most difficult part. One, why? Because Israel not going to allow it. They know if they rebuild everything and the Palestinians say they will face resistance in trying to take over the land. So we'll have to see what to be honest, we shouldn't see the reaction of Israel right now. We shouldn't care. But we have to see what they will say to this plan. And as soon as they come up with a statement, then we'll know what they want.
I think what's very disheartening is that we know that 100% that America has their back.
Yeah.
America 100% has their back. So it will be interesting to see what will happen.
Yeah,
But
so the geopolitics and the geoeconomics right now are very complicated because all these Arab nations, they do business with all the European nations and US, obviously. But what will eventually happen, we'll have to see. Time will tell if, when, and how, and all the operatives of all the finer details of this implementation of this plan will come out eventually, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
Hopefully
we will see what
it is carried
happens.
out, and as soon as Vision 2030 ends and Riyadh Expo happens, Syria is rebuilt as well.
Anyways, for our second topic of the day, it's about BlackRock. I know that BlackRock, Larry Fink's BlackRock, is a fan favorite for many people. They currently own, according to Reuters, $11 trillion in assets. Now, only I always say this, and every single time I'm just as impressed. Only two countries' GDPs in the world, America and China, have more assets than BlackRock. BlackRock is big, and basically what happened, one of their subsidiaries, Global Infrastructure Partners, GIP, is basically setting up an office in Qatar. And GIP itself, they actually manage $170 billion in assets, and what they're trying to do is they want to explore more investment opportunities in the Gulf region, and that it's interesting that they're doing that through Qatar, especially at a time where just now Qatar has been hailed as the richest country in the world. And essentially, this was shown by a study that was published by the United Nations, and it was on Arab economies. So I think I'm seeing how this is all coinciding here, Majid.
Yeah. The United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, very long name. So we are calling it a UN report. It is a
And the report is called Real Sizes of Arab Economies Between 2017 and 2023.
So it was an in-depth analysis. The thing with these reports is it's very hard to understand them for a normal person because they use terms like purchasing power parity and AIC and all these things. The simplest explanation that I can give is that Qatar is the richest country, but that's on the basis of how much money they have. Per capita, how much money every person earns. So that's per capita income. According to that, they're the richest. But UAE is the richest in terms of how much money that you get and you consume. So for example, if I get 100,000 a year, if I'm consuming 80,000 out of it and 20% goes into taxes and all that, then I'm consuming nearly 80% of it. In Qatar, that's lower than UAE. So whatever you get, it goes into other stuff and then you consume less. So Qatar, richest per capita.
Honestly, that makes sense. It's
so your
the
salary is
lifestyle that people go after here.
So Qatar has better salaries, but you consume that salary less. And UAE, you have a little lesser than Qatar, the salaries, but you consume more of that salary. That's the simplest explanation I can give. But interestingly, Qatar is the richest country, UAE is second.
Majid,
Bahrain is
really
third.
Pardon?
Bahrain is the third richest
I'm very
country.
surprised because Bahrain
But
is
it's Saudi
very
Arabia.
small. It's really, really
Yeah.
small. But you know, Majid, I'm honestly really interested in getting to the fine print of this
Yeah.
report. It'd be really interesting to
No, there
what
is-
led to these results.
They see, you can't really question UN's numbers. They go through a lot of processes. Interesting story. I met one guy at Qatar Web Summit recently.
Yeah.
I was in the hotel lobby and there was a guy standing right beside me. And at these events, you're just like, hello, hi. And I said, hello, hi. He worked for Financial Times and he worked for FDI Intelligence, which is a wing or like a subsidiary of Financial Times, which works on finding all the FDIs across the globe, like how much money is coming into the country and how much money is going out. So I had an interesting chat with him and I asked him, like, there is a special FDI Dubai part by the government of Dubai. And I was like, okay, but FDI Intelligence, I thought Dubai ran it. He's like, no, FDI Intelligence, FT owns it. FDI intelligence data, we give it to Dubai government for FDI Dubai. So whatever numbers Dubai publishes for FDI, they come from this research wing of Financial Times, and they do all the research. And obviously, the next follow-up question was, how do you accumulate that data? How do you go so deep to find out like each and every penny? He's like, first and the biggest source is government, their own numbers, one. Second, news sources. We go through all the reports that we can find across the globe.
And that's his job.
That's his job. So research, and so that is like one private FT is private company doing it. Imagine this same thing, same research happening at the UN level. They get data from so many sources because they have this pact with nearly 100 plus countries where the countries share their economic data with the UN. So ECOSOC is Economic and Social Council, they share it with that. They share it with a lot of countries. A lot of countries in the Middle East region don't share their data. A lot of countries in the underdeveloped countries, because of corruption, they don't share their data.
It's not even that they don't share their data. Imagine they don't have data.
No, they actually
don't.
have it because they need it for auditing the government.
No, they don't have data.
No, they have.
And you know,
Trust me, they have data, they just don't share it.
I'm gonna tell you why I know this. So basically, there was.
You can't make any country's budget without the data. So they have the data.
When
Trust
I say
me.
data, I mean like data of like all kinds of sectors. I remember
They
a long
have.
time ago, I did this study, and basically it was about like, because there's a theory, by the way, that vaccine causes autism.
Okay.
And
That's a weird claim, a conspiracy theory, but
this
yes.
theory is not true. But there was a time where people thought it was true because of these scientists. But that's
Rumors,
beside the
yeah.
point. So what I did was I carried out this like statistical report where I took the number of autism cases in a in a country and compared it to the number of people that got vaccinated. And what I did was that the entire study was focused on the MENA region.
Yeah.
And oh my God. You have no idea how difficult it was to find data on countries in Africa. And by the way, I would go to WHO, so I would go to the UN, and they just did not have data. And even when they did have data, by the way, I remember like the websites made it very clear that this data might be wrong due to the fact that the recording method that was used was not recent enough, or the fact that it was not done well enough, and that there are certain communities that they're just not covered on. Nobody knows where they live.
What you're talking about is public access to data. So yes, public access to that data is not good in underdeveloped countries in Africa, in Asia, but data is there. That's the funny story because without data, you can't make budgets. You can't know what your surplus is or what your deficit is. So all countries, even the worst economy in the world, they have data on literally everything.
That doesn't mean it's right, though.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean it's precise and
countries,
accurate.
they have to be right. So countries, they know everything. Every business is registered. For example, a Dubai company, even if it's not listed, private company, they have a certain obligation to the like administrating authority or the regulatory authority to tell what they're doing, what their profits and losses are. So they share that data. So data is always there. That's the problem with data. It's always there. Public availability is the problem. And that is one of the, sorry, I'm saying something good about US, but there is a very strict code of conduct in the US. Yeah, you say good things about US, people actually come back at you. US has a very clear law about it that some things are publicly available data and some things are not. And you can, if there is something which is publicly available, you can just go and access it through libraries, through centers, through the admin office for that data. UAE also has it. That's the good part. But UAE does not share its data, government data with UN. So it's one of the countries that doesn't do it. So these private networks then come in and they're like, okay, we'll do the data for you. A lot of details on data, but main part is public access to that data. Like you were talking about Africa, Asia, underdeveloped economies, because there's so much corruption. They don't hide it. They know it. In the data, it's very clear they've done corruption. They just hide the data. Because without data, you can't build your budgets. You can't do literally anything. You can't run a country. So that's the problem. Public availability of data.
Of course.
Main idea, coming back, went on
yeah.
a tangent that everyone knows about this, that Qatar is rich now because UN goes through a lot of research. So yeah, it's very, if you see a number when you go into research, I've worked in for like 6 months. So you go into research, you take numbers from 10 different sources. And if you get the same number, obviously, you're like, okay, 10 different sources saying the same number, perfect, this is right. But if you go to 10 different sources and there's 10 different numbers, then you have to like believe one source, and then you have to clarify that this data can be wrong. We just got it from a source which is very reliable and all of that. So yeah, research on these numbers is very extensive, very long.
But you know,
so we can trust
Majid,
this data, at least from UN.
Going back to this topic and, seeing how BlackRock owned Global Infrastructure Partners is moving to Qatar, I'm seeing something that's I'm not sure if, you can call it ironic, but, I remember there was a time where all Arab countries would do is that they would go invest outside. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but basically Qatar Investment Authority has major 20% stake in Heathrow Airport.
Yeah.
And even very recently, last year, at the end of the year, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, they also bought stake in Heathrow Airport. And, for the longest time ever, it was like a trend to go invest in the West.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there's other investments. So, for example, Sheikh Mansour, His Highness Sheikh Mansour, owning Manchester City.
Yeah.
Another one is the Habtours. So Khalaf al-Habtour, the empire that he's built, I'm pretty sure that he's purchased a Hilton in the UK. So for the longest time ever, we're seeing that, all of these individuals in the Gulf, in this region, they were investing outside, they were going outside. But now the trend is completely the opposite.
Yeah.
People are coming to them. BlackRock is coming to them. BlackRock, who has $11 trillion in assets. And that, to me, seeing that, it's kind of signifying that shift, that move of that the West is not so important anymore. It's the Arab world, and it's booming, and Arab economies are doing great.
To be honest, there's another argument about it, that Middle Eastern economies, as you said, perfectly true. They went out, they invested. The investment was so smart that they got a lot of money out of it.
Yeah.
Dividends, profits, everything. Now, the initial investment plus the profits that they got, they started accumulating a lot of money. And they need someone to manage that money, to reinvest it, to put it into projects. That is why all these asset managers are coming so rapidly into all these Middle Eastern countries. Because the Middle Easterns, 10 years ago or 8 years ago and recently, they're investing in such nice setups which nearly guarantee them returns. Very rare cases where we see that PIF or QIA or Oman's sovereign wealth fund.
Not just returns, Majid. I think it also guarantees them this godlike following. Because what has Burj Khalifa done to the UAE? Tallest building in the world. I can't imagine what the NEOM $1.5 trillion megacity that's being built in Saudi Arabia, what that's going to do to Saudi.
It's going to increase a lot of travel to their country.
What are people going to call it now? There was a time, I feel like, where all we would say is that, that's the home of God, Beit Allah.
Yeah.
We always say that. Whenever we speak about Saudi Arabia, Majid, somebody always jumps in and says, it does help that they have, God's support there.
Yeah.
But what is it going to be hailed as in the next
Umrah and
decade?
Hajj is one of their biggest industries, travel-wise. A lot of people travel to Saudi Arabia. I think nearly 40% of their total travelers go there for Umrah and Hajj. And in peak seasons like Ramadan, you won't find standing space in the Haram. But that adds to it. But to be honest, what I've seen in my first Umrah, they literally reinvest whatever they earned from it back into it. Always you'll see cranes there, something is being built, something is being refurbished, something is being made better. They're trying to make everything better.
You said something really interesting. Actually, there was a story that came out recently, guys, where basically this was not something that people were allowed to do before. Obviously, you cannot directly, purchase the land of the Kaaba or purchase anything there. But now you can actually buy stakes. You can invest into the companies in Saudi Arabia which own the land of the Kaaba. And I found that very interesting. That's a very new development.
Even still, the majority, 51%, should stay with the Saudi local. So the remaining 49%, they can sell and foreign investors can invest. So for example, some Saudi local, if he owns land in Makkah, maybe he has a company which is listed, you can invest in their shares. Before you couldn't, and usually those companies were never listed as well, but now you can invest in them. So that's the good part. You can become a minority shareholder.
That makes a lot of sense.
But majority shareholder will always be someone from Saudi, a local.
And
so they have power over the land.
Yeah, and this is very intentional on their side because accounting student over here, but it's like a very specific number. If your stakes go down 50% exactly, that's it.
Someone becomes a majority owner.
You don't become the person who makes all the decisions and these decisions actually stand. But anyways, let's actually discuss where Saudi Ninja, this quick commerce startup brand in Saudi Arabia is actually standing. What is it doing right now?
According to Bloomberg, they're raising a lot of money. No information was given about how much they're raising. But they're raising at an evaluation of $1 billion. That's unicorn territory. You become a unicorn as soon as your valuation hits $1 billion. So they think they're worth $1 billion right now, and they're raising money. Riyadh Capital is one of the companies which is investing in them, and they're going to lead maybe they're the only backer at this point for the funding. There's confusion about it. Bloomberg said it, that there's still no complete transparency about if it is happening even. But right now, sources close to the matter told them very clearly that Ninja is raising money. And the money is being called pre-IPO funding because by 2027, they have plans to go for an IPO as well. So we've seen recently in Saudi Arabia, a nice one did a very big IPO, raised millions of dollars, were oversubscribed a couple of 100 times on the stock market, even before the stocks opened. A lot of companies in Saudi Arabia, whoever is being listed right now, to be honest, they're being oversubscribed at least 100 times.
And
so
Majid,
that's good.
I truly do see the potential in Ninja. It's good that that they think that they have that $1 billion. No, it's really good because I remember I watched this video with Noor Suwaid, the first woman in the Middle East to launch an IPO, and she was basically talking about Hussam Arab, the founder of Tabby. And somebody asked her, what was one of your best favorite investments that you've ever made? And she said that it was into Tabby, it was into Hussam. And she said, when we had first started working together, I believe it was 2018, and that Tabby at that time, it was valued at $50 million. And today, Tabby is valued at $1 billion, actually making it a unicorn. So you never know, Ninja might catch up. It might reach that stage. I hope that it will reach that stage, and it's gonna be really interesting to see the impact that they're gonna make.
My main point that I saw was Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait. That is their 4 markets right now. I want them to come to the UAE. To be honest, when you're any kind of startup in any one country or 3-4 countries, you need to go to the biggest markets to see where you stand. And in UAE, to be honest, if they come and if they can give competition to Noon, Talabat, Kareem, we have here, we have so many things here. So if they can come and they can disrupt the market or at least gain 10% of the market, then to be honest, their evaluation will skyrocket. So it'll be interesting because they have Saudi Arabia on the list. That is their home country. They started there. Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait, to be honest, they're not that. They have the money, but they're not very big market in terms of people because you have less people there. So I just want them to try the UAE market, see before IPO if they plan an expansion to the UAE, I would want to see how they compete with Noon. First of all, Noon is like the best. I use it. That is why I have a bias towards it. But again, Talabat is doing good. They just raised like $1.5 billion on a $12 billion evaluation, more than their parent company, Delivery Hero. So they're doing good.
But all that money is going
I just
to
want to see
Germany.
the challenge. It's like a fight I want to see.
It's owned by Germany, right?
Yeah,
Delivery
German
Hero?
Delivery Hero is German. They bought it from Kuwaiti guy.
So that entire money, we wonder where it went.
Yeah, we talked about it a
We do
lot.
wonder.
It all went to Germany to pay their debts, Delivery Hero. But again, Talabat is doing good. They have a good market share. Noon has a very big market share right now. Again, Mr. Al-Abbar, very smart, wanted to beat Amazon, built up Noon, but right now it's not profitable still. But it will be profitable. The way they're doing things and their minutes thing, everything is delivered in 13, 14 minutes.
So insane.
Sometimes, I get
believe
scared.
It's real. I still can't believe it's real. I feel like I'm living in a dystopian world where I'm not allowed this privilege.
It's like you just think about it and they'll deliver it. So all this is happening, and Ninja may be coming to this market, and then this funding that they're raising and eventually their IPO, it'll be a very interesting case study for the future of the RPOs in Saudi Arabia and in Middle East overall.
It certainly will. If you want to know more about the Arab future, the Arab business future, do make sure to tune in. This is Smashy Business Show, Smashy Business production under the Augustus Media Podcast Network. You can find our newsletter on Smashy TV, and make sure to follow us on all of our channels. Have a lovely day.